The distress signal came through at 0347 hours, pulling Park Tae-ho from a dreamless sleep. He sat up in his pilot chair and rubbed his eyes. The small rescue ship hummed around him, its lights dim in the quiet of deep space. He had been alone out here for 3 weeks now, patrolling the empty sectors where nobody else wanted to go. Tae-ho looked at the signal on his screen. It was coming from a moon in the Kepler 442 system. That was strange. Nobody lived there. Nobody even visited there. The moon was covered in toxic crystals that could eat through metal, and the air was poison to most species in the galaxy. He checked the signal again. It was not human. The language was something his computer could not translate. But a distress signal was a distress signal. Someone was in trouble. Tae-ho turned his ship toward the moon. He knew he was breaking protocol. His orders said to stay in his patrol zone and report any unusual signals to command. But command was 6 hours away, and whoever sent that signal might not have 6 hours. The moon grew larger in his window. It was an ugly thing, gray and brown, covered in sharp crystal formations that sparkled in the light of the distant sun. Tae-ho brought his ship down through the thin atmosphere, watching the toxic readings climb on his display. His suit could protect him for about 4 hours out there, maybe less if he had to work hard. He found the crash site easily. A ship had come down hard, cutting a long scar through the crystal fields before stopping against a small mountain. The ship was like nothing Tae-ho had ever seen. It was long and silver, shaped almost like a fish, and it was big. Much bigger than his little rescue vessel. Tae-ho landed nearby and put on his helmet. The seal hissed as it locked into place. He grabbed his toolkit and stepped outside. The crystals crunched under his boots. The air outside his suit was a sick yellow color, thick with chemicals that would kill him in minutes if his suit failed. He walked toward the crashed ship, moving carefully over the sharp ground. The ship had a hole in its side. Something had exploded inside. Tae-ho climbed through the hole and turned on his helmet light. The inside of the ship was a mess. Metal walls had collapsed. Strange machines were broken and sparking. There was a smell coming through his suit filters, something like burning flowers. And there was blood. Silver blood splashed across the floor and walls. Tae-ho followed the blood trail deeper into the ship. He climbed over fallen beams and crawled under collapsed ceilings. The ship groaned around him, still settling after its crash. It was not safe in here. The whole thing could come down at any moment. He found her in what looked like the control room. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with silver skin that matched her blood. Her face was almost human, but not quite. Her eyes were too large, too dark, and they had no whites at all. She wore a uniform of some kind, torn and burned, and from the waist down she was trapped under a massive beam that had fallen from the ceiling. She was alive. Tae-ho could see her breathing, but she was not moving. She could not move. He approached slowly, not wanting to scare her. She turned her head and looked at him. Those dark eyes went wide with surprise. Then something strange happened. Her mouth opened, and words came out that Tae-ho could understand. His translator must have been working after all, just slow to process her language. "Human," she said. Her voice was weak but clear. "You should not be here." "I got your distress signal," Tae-ho said. He knelt beside her and looked at the beam. It was heavy, very heavy, but maybe he could move it with the right leverage. "Leave," she said. "Leave now. Your kind cannot survive here for long. The atmosphere will kill you." "I have 4 hours of oxygen," Tae-ho said. He opened his toolkit and started looking for something to use as a lever. "I am already dead," she said. "My spine is broken. Even if you free me, I cannot walk. I cannot fly this ship. I will die here no matter what you do. Do not throw away your life for nothing." Tae-ho found a metal bar that looked strong enough. He wedged it under the beam and tested the weight. It was going to be hard, but not impossible. "My name is Park Tae-ho," he said. "What is your name?" She stared at him like he had said something crazy. Maybe he had. Maybe her species did not share names with strangers. But after a moment, she answered, "Velith. I am Commander Velith of the Nethari 7th Fleet." "Nice to meet you, Commander Velith," Tae-ho said. He pushed on the bar with all his strength. The beam shifted a little, just a little. "I am going to get you out of here." "You are not listening," Velith said. Her voice was getting desperate now. "I am telling you to leave. That is an order." Taiho laughed. It was a tired laugh, but real. I am sorry, Commander. I do not take orders from you. I am Korean Space Rescue Corps. We have our own orders. And what are those orders? Taiho pushed on the bar again. The beam moved another inch. His arms were screaming with the effort, but he kept pushing. Never leave anyone behind, he said. That is the only order that matters. Velith made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. You humans, we have studied you for centuries. We thought we understood you. Small creatures, short lives, weak bodies, no natural weapons. You should have died out long ago. Sorry to disappoint you, Taiho said. And yet here you are, Velith continued, burning your limited oxygen, risking your fragile life, for a stranger, for an alien who has given you every reason to leave. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was very soft. Why? I do not understand why. Taiho stopped pushing for a moment. He looked at her, this strange silver alien who had probably seen more of the universe than he could ever imagine. She was scared. He could see it in those dark eyes. Not scared of dying, scared of something else, scared of not understanding. He smiled at her. Because you needed help, he said. That is enough. Then he went back to work on the beam. Velith was quiet for a long time after that. She watched him struggle and sweat and fight against a weight that should have been impossible for one human to move. She watched him refuse to give up. She watched him choose her life over his own safety again and again and again. And somewhere in that broken ship, on that poisoned moon, something changed inside her. Something that had been asleep for a very long time began to wake up. Velith had lived for over 800 years. In that time, she had commanded fleets that stretched across star systems. She had seen planets born and die. She had met thousands of species, studied their cultures, learned their languages, and watched many of them fade into extinction. The Nethari were ancient. They had been traveling the stars when most other species were still learning to make fire. And in all that time, Velith had never seen anything like the human working in front of her. He was so small. His body was soft and weak compared to hers. He had no claws, no armor, no venom. His eyes could only see a tiny part of the light spectrum. His ears could only hear a narrow range of sounds. By every measure the Nethari used to judge species, humans were barely worth noticing. They were classified as Category 7, which meant primitive and harmless. The Nethari did not even bother to make contact with them most of the time. But this small, weak, primitive creature was moving a beam that weighed more than his entire body. He had been working for almost 2 hours now. His breathing was heavy and rough inside his helmet. Sweat dripped down his face. His muscles shook with exhaustion, but he did not stop. You are damaging yourself, Velith said. She could see the signs of strain in his body. Humans were not built for this kind of work. Your muscles are tearing. Your joints are under too much pressure. I know, Taiho said. He did not stop working. If you continue, you may cause permanent injury to yourself. Probably, Taiho agreed. He found a new angle for his lever and pushed again. The beam moved another few inches. Velith did not understand. She had ordered soldiers into battle before. She had asked them to risk their lives for the Nethari Empire. But that was duty. That was honor. That was something they owed to their species and their commanders. This human owed her nothing. He did not even know her. They had met less than 2 hours ago, and he was destroying his body to save her. Stop, she said. Please stop. I am begging you. Taiho paused. He looked at her with those strange human eyes, brown and warm, and filled with something she could not name. I am almost there, he said. Just a little more. No, Velith said. You do not understand. I am begging you to stop. Do you know what that means? The Nethari do not beg. We have never begged. Not in 10,000 years of history. We are the eldest. We do not ask lesser species for anything. Taiho was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. It was a strange expression, pulling up the corners of his mouth. Velith had seen humans make this face in recordings before, but she had never understood what it meant. I do not think you are lesser, Taiho said. I think you are hurt and scared and alone. I think you crashed on a moon that nobody visits and sent a signal that nobody was supposed to hear. And I think you have been lying here for hours, waiting to die, believing that nobody would come. Velith said nothing. He was right about all of it. But I came, Tejo said, and I am not leaving you. So you can beg all you want, Commander. I am still going to save you. He went back to work. The beam finally moved enough for Velith to be pulled free. Taiho grabbed her under the arms and dragged her out from under it. Her legs did not work. She could not feel anything below her waist, but she was free. Taiho collapsed beside her. His breathing was very bad now. There was a wet sound in his lungs that scared Velith. She looked at him more closely and saw that his suit was torn. A small rip near his shoulder, probably from rubbing against the sharp metal while he worked. The toxic atmosphere had been leaking in for who knew how long. "Your suit," she said. "It is damaged." Taiho looked down at the tear. He did not seem surprised. "I noticed," he said, "about an hour ago." "And you kept working? The atmosphere here is poison to your species. You have been breathing it in this whole time." "I know," Taiho coughed. There was blood on his lips when he finished. Silver blood would have meant nothing to Velith, but human blood was red, and seeing it made something twist in her chest. "You knew," she said slowly. "You knew your suit was broken. You knew you were being poisoned, and you did not stop. You did not even slow down." "You were still trapped," Taiho said, like it was obvious, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Velith stared at him. In 800 years, she had never felt so confused. The Nathari had rules about everything. They had logic and reason and carefully calculated decisions. Every action had a purpose. Every risk was measured against the reward. This human had done the math and decided that saving a stranger was worth dying for. It did not make sense. And yet here he was, coughing up blood and smiling at her, like he had done something good. Taiho checked his oxygen gauge. "I have about 30 minutes left," he said. "Maybe less with the suit damage. I activated my rescue beacon when I landed, but I do not think anyone is coming. Too far out." "My people might come," Velith said. "I sent my own distress signal before the crash. But I do not know if they received it. I do not know if they are looking." "Then we wait," Taiho said. He lay down on the floor beside her, looking up at the damaged ceiling of her ship. Not much else to do. They were quiet for a while. Velith listened to Taiho's breathing getting worse. Each breath was a struggle now. The poison was in his lungs, eating away at the soft tissue inside. He was dying because he had saved her. "I have a question," Velith said finally. "Go ahead. If you could go back, if you could make the choice again, knowing what would happen, would you still come down here? Would you still try to save me?" Taiho did not even hesitate. "Yes. But why? You are dying now. You will never see your home again. Your family will never know what happened to you. Your life is ending on an ugly moon that nobody cares about, for an alien you just met. How can that be worth it?" Taiho turned his head to look at her. His eyes were getting glassy now, losing focus, but his voice was steady. "Because I would rather die knowing I tried," he said, "than live knowing I did not." He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were smaller than hers, weaker than hers, warmer than hers. She had never touched a human before. She had never thought she would want to, but she held his hand anyway. "Thank you," she said. The words felt strange in her mouth. The Nathari did not say thank you to lesser species, but he was not lesser. He had never been lesser. "You are welcome," Taiho said. Then he closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. His grip on her hand loosened. Velith held on tighter, as if she could keep him alive by will alone. She had commanded armies. She had destroyed enemy fleets. She had shaped the fate of worlds. And she could not save one small human who had given everything to save her. She was still holding his hand when the rescue ships arrived. The Nathari patrol ship found them 3 hours after Taiho stopped breathing. By that time, his heart had stopped twice. His lungs were filled with blood and poison. His body was shutting down piece by piece, giving up the fight that his mind had refused to surrender. But the Nathari had technology that humans could not imagine. They had been healing their own kind for 10,000 years. They put Taiho in a medical pod and filled his lungs with tiny machines that ate the poison and repaired the damage. They gave him new blood because his own was too full of toxins. They kept his brain alive while they rebuilt his body from the inside out. It took 9 days. Valeth refused to leave the medical bay. Her own injuries were bad, but she would not let the doctors treat her until they had stabilized the human. The other Nethari on the ship did not understand. Why was their commander so worried about a primitive creature? Why did she sit beside his pod for hours, watching the machines work to save his life? She could not explain it to them. She was not sure she could explain it to herself. Her spine was repaired on the third day. The Nethari doctors grew new nerve tissue and connected it to her damaged body. By the fifth day, she could walk again. By the seventh day, she was fully healed. But she still did not leave the medical bay. On the ninth day, Taiho opened his eyes. He was confused at first. The medical bay was bright and clean, filled with machines that hummed softly. Everything was silver and white. It looked nothing like any human hospital. Veleth watched his face as he tried to understand where he was. "You are safe," she said. "You are on a Nethari medical ship. You have been asleep for 9 days." Taiho turned his head toward her voice. His eyes found her face, and she saw recognition there. He remembered her. He remembered what had happened. "You are walking," he said. His voice was rough from not being used. "Yes, your doctors fixed my spine." "My doctors?" "No, sorry. I said that wrong. Our doctors, Nethari doctors." Veleth paused. She had never been this nervous before. Not in battle, not in front of the High Council. Not ever. "They fixed you too. Your lungs were very badly damaged. They had to rebuild most of them." Taiho looked down at his own body. He lifted his hands and looked at them, like he was seeing them for the first time. "I thought I was dead," he said. "You were. Twice. Your heart stopped twice before we could stabilize you." "Oh." Taiho put his hands down. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Veleth again. "Why? Why what? Why did you save me? You said the Nethari do not care about lesser species. You said I was primitive. Why did you work so hard to save my life?" Veleth had been asking herself the same question for 9 days. The answer she had found was not one that made sense by Nethari standards. It was not logical. It was not practical. It was something else entirely. "Because you saved me first," she said. "Because you gave everything you had to free me from that wreckage. Because you held my hand when you thought you were dying, and you still did not regret coming for me." She paused, trying to find the right words. "My people have a concept called the life debt. It is very old. We do not use it much anymore because we rarely owe anything to anyone. The Nethari are the eldest. We are the ones who give, not the ones who receive." "But," Taiho prompted, "but I owe you my life, and by our oldest laws, that means I must repay that debt. I must give you something of equal value." Taiho shook his head slowly. "I do not want anything. I did not save you to get something in return." "I know. That is what makes it so strange." Veleth moved closer to his bed. "In my 800 years, I have never met anyone who acted without expecting reward. The Nethari do everything for a reason. We calculate the costs and benefits of every action. We do not waste resources on things that give us no advantage." "That sounds exhausting," Taiho said. Veleth almost laughed. It caught her by surprise. "It is efficient. It sounds lonely." That one hit harder. Veleth looked away from him, out the window at the stars passing by. "Perhaps it is," she admitted. "I had not thought about it that way before." They were quiet for a while. Taiho was still weak, and talking seemed to tire him. But Veleth did not want to leave. She had spent 9 days watching him sleep, and now that he was awake, she did not want to miss a moment of it. "Where are we going?" Taiho asked finally. "To Nether Prime, the homeworld of my people. I need to report to the High Council about my crash and explain why there is a human on a military medical vessel." "Will I be in trouble?" "No. You saved the life of a fleet commander. Even if my people do not understand why you did it, they cannot ignore what you did." "And will you be in trouble?" Veleth considered the question. "Probably. I broke many rules during this mission. My ship was destroyed. I sent distress signals on unsecured channels, and I have brought a human into Nethari space without proper authorization." "I am sorry," Taiho said. "I did not mean to cause problems for you." "You did not cause problems. You solved them. I would be dead if not for you." Veleth turned back to face him. "Whatever happens with the council, I will make sure you are treated well. You have my word. Taiho smiled at her. It was the same smile he had given her in the wreckage when he refused to leave. The smile that said he was going to help her no matter what. Thank you, Commander Velith. Please, just Velith. I think we are past formalities now. Velith. Taiho tested the name. I like that. It sounds like something beautiful. Velith did not know what to say to that. Compliments from humans were not something she had ever experienced before. She felt warmth in her face that might have been embarrassment. Rest now, she said. You need to rebuild your strength. The trip to Nether Prime takes several more days, and you will need to be strong enough to walk when we arrive. Will you stay? Taiho asked. His eyes were already closing again, the medicine pulling him back toward sleep. Will you be here when I wake up? Velith reached out and took his hand, just as he had taken hers in the wreckage. His fingers were warm against her cool skin. I will be here, she said. I promise. It was the first promise she had ever made to a human, but she knew somehow that it would not be the last. Nether Prime was the most beautiful planet Taiho had ever seen. It was covered in silver forests and crystal lakes that reflected the light of 3 moons. The cities rose high into the sky, towers of glass and metal that seemed to touch the clouds. Everything was clean and perfect and ancient beyond human understanding. The Nethari had been building these cities when humans were still living in caves. They had been traveling between stars when Earth was nothing but a ball of rock and fire. They were the eldest species in the known galaxy, and they had never let anyone forget it. Taiho walked beside Velith through the capital city. People stopped to stare at him. He was the first human most of them had ever seen in person. They whispered to each other in their musical language, pointing at his small body and strange coloring. He tried not to feel self-conscious about it. They are curious, Velith said. Humans are rare here. Most Nethari have only seen your species in recordings. What do the recordings say about us? Velith was quiet for a moment. That you are young. Your species is only a few 100,000 years old. That is nothing compared to us. The recordings say you are primitive, aggressive, and short-lived. They say you fight wars over small differences in belief. They say you destroy your own planet with pollution and greed. Taiho nodded slowly. He could not argue with any of that. It was all true. But the recordings do not show what I saw, Velith continued. They do not show a man who would burn his own lungs to save a stranger. They do not show kindness that makes no logical sense. They do not show courage that comes from the heart instead of the head. They reached the great hall where the High Council met. It was an enormous building, made of stone that was older than human civilization. Velith stopped at the entrance and turned to face Taiho. I must speak to the council alone first, she said. They will want to hear my report before they decide what to do with you. Wait here. I will come for you when it is time. Taiho wanted to argue, but he knew this was not his world. He did not understand the rules here. He had to trust Velith. Good luck, he said. Velith entered the great hall. Inside, the 12 members of the High Council sat in a half-circle, their silver faces stern and unreadable. The High Chancellor was in the center, a Nethari so old that his skin had turned from silver to pale white. Commander Velith, the High Chancellor said, you have returned from your patrol with interesting company. Explain yourself. Velith told them everything. She told them about the crash, about the distress signal, about the human who came when nobody else would. She told them about the poison in his lungs and the blood on his lips and the smile he gave her when he said he would not leave. She told them about the 9 days in the medical bay and the promise she had made. When she finished, the council was silent. Then one of them laughed. You want us to believe this story? He said. A human risked his life for a Nethari? Impossible. They are Category 7. They do not even have the intelligence to understand what they would be giving up. He understood, Velith said. He understood better than any of us. This is foolishness, another council member said. Humans are primitive creatures. They act on instinct, not reason. This one probably did not even know what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. Velith's voice was getting stronger now, harder. He knew his suit was torn. He knew the poison was killing him, and he kept working anyway because he could not leave me to die alone. Enough, the High Chancellor said. What is your purpose here, Commander? Why are you telling us this story? Velith took a deep breath. I am requesting a reclassification of humanity. They should not be Category 7. They are more than we have given them credit for." The laughter this time was louder. Several council members shook their heads in disbelief. Reclassification? Based on the actions of one human? That is not how we measure species, Commander. Then our measurements are wrong. The hall went silent. No one had ever challenged the classification system before. It had been in place for thousands of years. It was the foundation of how the Nathari understood the galaxy. "We measure species by their power," Velith said. "Their weapons, their ships, their technology. We count their armies and their resources. We calculate their threat level and their usefulness. But we have forgotten to measure what matters most." "And what is that?" the High Chancellor asked. "The quality of their souls." The council members looked at each other. This was not language they were used to hearing. The Nathari had stopped talking about souls a long time ago. "This human had nothing to gain by saving me," Velith continued. "He had everything to lose, and he still did it. He still smiled at me while he was dying, and told me that I was worth it. That is not primitive. That is not instinct. That is something we have lost. Something we forgot how to do." She looked at each council member in turn. "When was the last time any of you risked everything for a stranger? When was the last time you acted with kindness instead of calculation? When was the last time you did something good just because it was good?" No one answered. "Humans are not perfect," Vela said. "They make mistakes. They fight among themselves. They are young and confused and often cruel, but they also have something beautiful inside them, something that makes them reach out to strangers in the dark, something that makes them refuse to give up even when there is no hope." She thought of Tai-Ho's hand in hers. She thought of his smile. She thought of his voice saying that he would rather die trying than live without trying. "We have studied humans for centuries and learned nothing," Velith said. "This one human taught me more in a few hours than all our research ever did. If we are too proud to learn from them, then we deserve to be forgotten when our time comes." The High Chancellor was quiet for a long time. The other council members whispered among themselves. Velith waited, her heart beating hard in her chest. Finally, the High Chancellor spoke. "Your request for reclassification is denied," he said, "but your words will be recorded in our histories. And this human, Park Teho, will be given honorary status as a friend of the Nathari people. He saved the life of a commander. We will not forget that debt." It was not everything Velith wanted, but it was a beginning. When she walked out of the Great Hall, Tai-Ho was waiting for her. He looked worried. "What happened?" he asked. Velith smiled. It was a strange expression on her silver face, something she had learned from watching him. "I planted a seed," she said. "Now we wait for it to grow." 6 months passed. Tai-Ho stayed on Nether Prime as a guest of Velith. He learned their language, studied their customs, and slowly began to understand these ancient people who had watched the universe grow old. Some Nathari treated him with curiosity. Others treated him with suspicion. A few, who had heard Velith's speech to the council, treated him with something like respect. Velith's words had spread, not officially, of course. The High Council had not changed their position on humans, but stories traveled through the Nathari networks, passed from person to person. The story of a human who would not leave. The story of a commander who learned something new after 800 years of thinking she knew everything. Some Nathari dismissed the story as fantasy. Others argued about what it meant, but everyone was talking about it. Tai-Ho did not know any of this. He was too busy learning to live in a world that was not his own. He missed Earth. He missed his family. He missed the smell of rain and the taste of food that was not designed for alien bodies. But every time he thought about going home, he remembered Velith's face when she talked about the seed she had planted. He wanted to see it grow. Then the news came, and everything changed. The Kreth Dominion had awakened. Tai-Ho did not know who the Kreth were at first. Velith explained them to him, and her voice was heavy with old fear. "The Kreth are conquerors," she said. "They do not trade. They do not negotiate. They take what they want and destroy what they do not need. 1,000 years ago, they nearly conquered the entire galaxy. It took every species working together to push them back. What happened to them? They retreated to their home space and went quiet. We hoped they had learned their lesson. We hoped they would never come back. But they are back now. Velith nodded. Her silver face was pale. They have started attacking the outer colonies, small settlements that belong to no major power, places that cannot defend themselves. Taiho felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Human colonies too? Yes. There are several human settlements in the outer regions. They were established by colonists who wanted to get away from Earth's governments. They have no military protection, no allies, nothing but their own courage. We have to help them. Velith looked at him with sad eyes. I agree, but the High Council does not. They say humanity is not a member species of the Galactic Alliance. We have no obligation to protect them. Our resources must be saved for protecting our own people. Tejo stood up. He had been sitting in Velith's quarters, looking out at the Silver City below. Now he turned to face her, and there was fire in his eyes. My sister is on one of those colonies, he said. Yuna. She was always the brave one, the one who wanted to explore. She went to New Busan 5 years ago to start a new life. She sends me messages every month. He paused, his voice breaking. I have not heard from her in 3 weeks. Taiho, I have to go. I have to find her. I have to help. How? You have no ship. You have no weapons. You are one human in a galaxy at war. I do not care. I will find a way. Velith was quiet for a long moment. She remembered the crashed ship. She remembered the beam that was too heavy to move and the suit that was torn. She remembered a man who knew he was dying and kept working anyway. You cannot do this alone, she said. I know, but I have to try. Velith stood up. She was a head taller than him, her silver skin glowing in the light from the window. She looked at him the same way he had looked at her in that wreckage, with determination that refused to break. You are not alone, she said. I am coming with you. The High Council will never allow it. They said humans are not your responsibility. The High Council can make their own choices. So can I. Velith walked to a cabinet on the wall and opened it. Inside was her old uniform, the one she had worn when she crashed. It had been repaired and cleaned. I am a commander of the Nethari 7th Fleet. I have friends. I have ships. I have soldiers who are tired of watching the Council do nothing while innocent people die. You would risk your career, your position, everything you have worked for? Velith smiled. It was still a strange expression on her face, but she was getting better at it. You asked me once why I saved your life. I said it was because of the life debt, because you saved me first. She paused, looking at the uniform in her hands. But that was not the whole truth. What was the whole truth? You showed me something I had forgotten. You showed me that some things are more important than logic, more important than efficiency, more important than protecting yourself. She looked up at him, and there were tears in her dark eyes. You showed me that sometimes the right thing to do is the thing that makes no sense at all. Taiho felt his own eyes getting wet. Velith. I spent 800 years following rules and calculations. I spent 800 years being careful and wise and safe. And all that time I was missing something. Something that you carry inside you like a fire. She reached out and touched his chest, right over his heart. This. Whatever this is. I want to understand it. I want to feel it. I want to be the person who stays when everyone else leaves. She dropped her hand and straightened her spine. So yes, I am coming with you. And anyone who wants to stop me will have to go through me first. Tejo did not know what to say, so he did what felt right. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a hug. Nethari did not hug. It was not part of their culture. But Velith did not pull away. After a moment, she put her own arms around him and held him close. Thank you, Tejo whispered. No, Velith said. Thank you for reminding me what it means to be alive. They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the silver light of Nethar Prime. Outside, the galaxy was burning. War was coming. Death was coming. But they were not afraid, because they were not alone. And sometimes that was enough. The fleet that Velith gathered was small. 12 ships, crewed by Nethari who had heard her speech and believed in something more than duty. They were rebels now, breaking the Council's orders to save people who were not their own kind. The punishment for this would be severe if they survived. None of them cared. They traveled for 2 weeks to reach New Busan. Along the way, they passed through sectors that had already been hit by the Kreth. Empty stations floated in the void, their lights dark, their corridors full of bodies. Colonies burned on dead worlds, nothing left but ash and memory. Taiho watched it all through the view screen. Each destroyed settlement made him more afraid for Yuna. Each body he saw could have been hers. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He just watched and waited and hoped. "We will find her," Velas said. She stood beside him on the bridge, her hand on his shoulder. "Your sister is strong. You told me so yourself." "She is strong," Taiho agreed, "but the Kreth are stronger. Strength is not everything. You taught me that." They arrived at New Busan on a gray morning. The colony was built on a small moon, surrounded by mountains of ice and rock. From space, it looked peaceful. Taiho could see the lights of the main settlement, the farms spreading out into the valleys, the small ships moving between buildings. Then the alarms started screaming. The Kreth fleet appeared out of nowhere. They must have been hiding behind the larger planet, waiting for prey. There were over 100 ships, dark and ugly, covered in weapons. They moved toward the colony like a swarm of hungry insects. "Battle stations," Veleth ordered. Her voice was calm, but Taiho could see the tension in her shoulders. "All ships form a defensive line between the Kreth and the colony. We hold them here as long as we can." "We cannot win this fight," one of her officers said. "We are outnumbered 10-1. We do not need to win. We need to give the colonists time to evacuate." Veleth turned to Taiho. "Can you contact your sister from here?" Taiho tried the colony's communication frequency. Static at first, then a voice. A woman's voice, tired and scared but still strong. "This is Park Yuna, of New Busan Defense." "Who is this?" "Yuna." Taiho's voice cracked. "Yuna, it is Taiho. I am here. I am in the sky above you, with friends. We are going to hold off the Kreth while you evacuate." "Taiho, what are you doing here?" "It is a long story. I will tell you later. Right now, you need to get everyone on ships and get them out of here." "We cannot evacuate everyone. We do not have enough ships. Half the colony will have to stay behind." Taiho closed his eyes. Half the colony. Thousands of people. "Then get the children out first. The families. Anyone who cannot fight." "What about the rest of us?" "Fight. Hold out as long as you can. We will do the same up here." There was a pause, then Yuna laughed. It was a broken sound, half sob and half defiance. "You always were the stubborn one, big brother, coming all this way to save us. I had help. Then thank your help for me." Yuna out. The battle began. The Kreth came fast and hard, their weapons tearing through space. Veleth's ships spread out, dodging and weaving, firing back with everything they had. 3 Nathari ships died in the first minute, torn apart by missiles. 4 more in the next 5 minutes. The Kreth kept coming, endless and unstoppable. On the surface, Yuna rallied the colonists. They had no military training. Most of them were farmers and engineers and shopkeepers. But they had guns and they had walls, and they had something the Kreth had never understood. They had something to protect. The evacuation ships launched one by one, carrying the young and the helpless to safety. Each ship that escaped was a victory. Each life saved was a light in the darkness. But the Kreth were getting closer. The defensive line was falling apart. "We cannot hold much longer," Veleth said. Blood dripped down her face from a cut on her forehead. The bridge had taken a hit. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. "We have 4 ships left. The Kreth have over 80. "Then we give them 4 ships worth of trouble," Taiho said. He had taken over weapons control when the officer there died. His hands moved across the console, targeting enemy ships, firing again and again. "We do not stop until we cannot fight anymore." "You sound like a Nathari warrior." "I sound like my sister." They fought on. Minutes felt like hours. Ships died around them, both Nathari and Kreth. The colony below was burning in places, but still fighting, still refusing to give up. Then something strange happened. New ships appeared on the edge of the battle. Not Kreth ships, not Nathari ships either. Taiho did not recognize them at first. They were all different sizes and shapes, like someone had gathered ships from a dozen different species and pointed them in the same direction. "Who are they?" Taiho asked. Velith stared at the screen. Her dark eyes went wide. "I do not know. I do not. Wait, I am getting a communication." A voice came through the speakers, then another voice, then a dozen more. Species from across the galaxy, speaking in different languages, but all saying the same thing. "We heard the story. We heard about the human who would not leave. We heard about the commander who remembered what courage looked like. We came to help." The new ships attacked the Kreth from behind. It was not enough to win, not by itself, but it was enough to change the fight, enough to give the last evacuation ships time to escape, enough to make the Kreth realize they were not fighting one species anymore. They were fighting everyone. The Kreth commander made a decision. He had come for an easy victory, a weak colony with no defenders. He had not expected this. He had not expected a dozen species to throw themselves into a battle they could not win, just because of a story about a stranger who would not leave. The Kreth retreated. Velith watched them go, her body shaking with exhaustion and relief. They had lost 8 ships. Hundreds of Nathari had died. The colony below was half destroyed. But the people had survived. The children had escaped. Yuna was alive. And across the galaxy, a message was spreading. A message that the Kreth had heard and did not understand. A message that would change everything. Humans do not give up. And now neither did anyone else. The Battle of New Busan changed everything. In the weeks that followed, the story spread across every corner of the galaxy. A human and a Nathari standing together. A fleet of rebels refusing to abandon strangers. A dozen species arriving to fight beside people they had never met. The Kreth retreating for the first time in 1,000 years. It was more than a military victory. It was proof that something the galaxy had forgotten was still possible. The Nathari High Council called an emergency meeting. Velith expected to be arrested. She had broken their laws. She had defied their orders. She had caused a diplomatic incident that would take years to sort out. Instead, they offered her a seat on the council itself. "Your actions were reckless," the High Chancellor said. His voice was old and tired, but there was something new in his eyes. Something that might have been respect. "You risked Nathari lives for humans. You started a battle we could not win. You disobeyed every protocol we have." "Yes," Velith said, "I did. And yet, you were right." The High Chancellor looked around at the other council members. Several of them would not meet his eyes. "We have spent 10,000 years believing we were better than everyone else. We measured species by their power and found them all lacking. We forgot that there are other ways to measure worth." He stood up slowly, his ancient bones creaking. "The humans have a saying. We found it in their cultural records. They say that a society should be judged by how it treats its weakest members. By that measure, Commander Velith has shown us what we have become. We protected only ourselves. We calculated the value of lives and found some too low to save." He walked down from his seat and stood before Velith. He was the oldest Nathari alive, older than mountains, older than stars. And he bowed to her. "You have reminded us what we should be," he said. "Please, help us remember." The reclassification of humanity was approved the same day. They were no longer Category 7. They were given a new designation, one that had never been used before. Category Prime, species of exceptional moral significance. It did not mean humans were the most powerful species in the galaxy. They were not. It did not mean they were the most intelligent or the most advanced. They were not those things either. It meant something different, something more important. It meant they were worth protecting, worth learning from, worth listening to. Taiho stood on the surface of New Busan, watching the rebuilding begin. Nathari ships carried supplies and materials. Human workers rebuilt houses and farms. Species that had never cooperated before worked side by side, learning each other's languages, sharing each other's food. Yuna stood beside him. She was thinner than he remembered, with new scars on her arms and a hardness in her eyes that had not been there before. But she was alive. She was still his sister. "I cannot believe you came all this way for me," she said. "I had help. This Velith person, the alien commander." Yuna looked up at the sky where Nathari's ship still orbited. She must be something special. She is, Taiho agreed. She saved my life once. Then I saved hers. Then she saved mine again. It got confusing after a while. That is what you do, big brother. You make things confusing. You show up where you should not be and you refuse to leave, and you make everyone around you question everything they believe. Yuna punched him lightly on the arm. It is very annoying. Thank you. It was not a compliment. I know. Thank you anyway. Velith found them there an hour later. She walked across the muddy ground in her silver uniform, looking out of place among the human colonists. But no one stared at her the way they would have a year ago. Everyone knew who she was now. Everyone knew what she had done. The Council has approved the Alliance Treaty, she said. Humanity is now officially under the protection of the Nethari Empire, and we are under yours. Under ours? Teho asked. Yes, it works both ways now. If we are attacked, humans will come to help us. If you are attacked, we will come to help you. That is what allies do. Yuna laughed. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. A year ago, I thought it was complicated. I thought everything had to be calculated and measured and balanced. Then your brother taught me something I had forgotten. She looked at Taiho, and there was warmth in her dark eyes. Some things do not need to be complicated. Some things are as simple as seeing someone in trouble and choosing to help. Taiho felt his face getting hot. Humans did that when they were embarrassed. He had never explained it to Velith, but she seemed to understand anyway. What happens now, he asked. Now we rebuild. New Busan, the Alliance, everything. Velith gestured at the construction around them. It will take years, maybe decades. The Kreth are still out there. There will be more battles, more losses, more pain. But we will face it together, Yuna said. Yes, together. Velith reached out and took Taiho's hand. It was still strange, this human gesture of connection, but she was learning to like it. That is what your brother taught the galaxy, that together is better than alone, that helping is better than watching, that kindness is not weakness. A group of children ran past them, laughing and shouting. Some were human, some were Nethari. They were playing some kind of game, chasing each other through the mud, falling down and getting up and falling down again. One of the Nethari children tripped over a rock. She fell hard, scraping her silver knee on the ground. A human boy stopped running and went back to her. He helped her up, brushed the dirt off her uniform, and made sure she was okay before they started playing again. Velith watched them, her eyes glistening with something that might have been tears. Nethari did not cry, but maybe she thought it was time they learned. Your species will change the galaxy, she said to Taiho, not through conquest or technology, through something we had forgotten existed. What is that? The stubborn belief that everyone deserves someone who will not leave them behind. Taiho laughed and shook his head. That is not special. That is just being human. Velith watched the children play. She watched the human boy help the Nethari girl get up again after another fall. She watched them laugh together like species and history, and 10,000 years of arrogance meant nothing at all. Perhaps, she said softly, or perhaps that is what we should all aspire to become. She squeezed Taiho's hand. He squeezed back. And somewhere in the rebuilt colony, on the scarred moon that had nearly been destroyed, the future began. Not with weapons or treaties or grand declarations, but with two people holding hands and a group of children learning to help each other up. It was not the end of the story. It was never the end. It was always just the beginning.